Today we're going to cover the cost of living in Dallas-Fort Worth. We're going to discuss a general overview and some of the basic things that you can expect, but then we're also going to dive into some of the nitpicky items and some of the hidden cost of what you need to be accounting for when you're trying to factor in the overall cost of living here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Here we go. So welcome to the channel. I'm Michael, and these videos are made to give you a real-life locals perspective on life here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And being a flat fee real estate agent here in the area, whether you're looking to purchase a home, move to the area, relocate, or if you're looking to sell a home, all while avoiding that typical 6% real estate commission cost, that's where my flat fee listing model can come into play. So give me a call, text, email. I'd love to help however I can, process your goals, your situation. We can hop on a Zoom call and figure out how I can ultimately best help. So let's talk about a quick general overview of what you can expect. And then here shortly, we're gonna cover some of those hidden or nitpicky costs that you need to be factoring in terms of cost of living. And let's talk about one of the biggest elements that are taken into consideration when trying to figure this out, and that is going to be the overall housing cost of what you can expect here in DFW. So when looking at the total 2023 stats in terms of cost of living and then bringing that up to where we currently are today in 2024, here in DFW, we are looking at an average or median home price of costing around $425,000 to $450,000 for the cost of a home. And then when looking at what current data shows, we're looking at about $2,500 to $3,000 per month. And then when it comes to the average monthly rent of what your standard average person is paying across the entire Metroplex, we're looking at about $1,800 for your typical apartment and around $2,500 and up for a single family home. So when it comes to homeowners and people who are renting, all of that data, it shows that DFW is about 3 to 4% lower than your national average. So as a whole, kind of on a broad scale, DFW looks pretty good and pretty affordable compared to some areas that you may be familiar with or coming from. So if we were just to break it down in simple numbers of what somebody, one person, one individual can expect to survive and live comfortably here in DFW and what they could pay a month, total for one person to average around $2,500 per month for everything to enjoy a comfortable living here in DFW. And then other stats show for a family of 4, the total cost of living could be upwards of about $6,000 per month. And then if you were to ask how much income do I need to be making to live comfortably here in the area, a bunch of research data points that I've been able to look into showed that an average income of around $64,000 is pretty much what it's going to take to live comfortably here in DFW. And of course, when factoring in your overall cost of living, it is very much kind of dependent on you as an individual, with things that go along with what are your monthly subscriptions, your cell phone bills, what else are you subscribed to, etc. So this video is not really taking those into account. But when it comes to some of the more things that Texans and people living in DFW can truly expect to account for in their cost of living expenses, some of the more nitpicky or hidden costs, let's talk about a few of those right now. And these first couple have to do with driving and commuting. So gas prices here in Dallas, I see as a huge advantage in comparison to some other states and places across the country that I've seen, or people visiting here to DFW. Whenever they come here and see what we're paying for gas prices, they're just absolutely blown away. And year over year, on average, it turns out that DFW is paying about 13% less on their gas prices compared to the rest of the country. And then another element of driving that you need to factor into the cost of living, especially when commuting around, going to work, or just traveling, or just going anywhere around the Metroplex, you definitely need to take into consideration these toll tags and what the tolls cost whenever you're driving around. So there are 2 types of tolls here around Dallas. First, you have your fixed pricing of the tolls. And that's when you sign up to the NTTA kind of toll tag account and you have the toll sticker riding around your vehicle. These are set up as prepaid plans, and per vehicle, it can cost anywhere from $20 a month to $40 a month. And then you have the demand pricing of how toll prices are set. And that's where these toll costs can really get you. As you're driving around and commuting all around the Metroplex, You're gonna see different roads and highways and turnpikes to where based on time of day, time of year, peak season, etc., and the amount of traffic and car wrecks, certain tollways and roads that you can take that might offer you a slightly more efficient route is gonna cost you a whole lot more. And I've seen driving down the road sometimes to where, hey, if I take this toll and save 5 minutes, it's gonna cost me $15 more for only 5 more minutes. And I haven't experienced it this rough, but I know, and I've spoken with people who, when doing a year in review and talking about how much they spent in a year on the tolls, they're looking at $200 a month, which is absolutely ridiculous. $200 a month, that equals over $2,000 per year just in toll cost. So definitely take this into consideration and ultimately factor that in when you're trying to figure out your cost of living in DFW. And another thing that you need to factor in, which you're not going to be surprised at this point because it's the utility bills, but whenever you start to learn about the utility bills and the cost that utilities are here in DFW, that's when your mind's going to get blown a little bit. And everybody needs to factor in the cost of utilities when factoring in their overall cost of living. So that part, not so much a surprise, but what is kind of a shocker is when you find out how expensive and how much the utility bills on average in DFW are compared to the rest of the country. Now in DFW, we go through the absolute extremes in terms of different weather. And with Texas being on its own grid, like we're not hooked up to a national grid like the rest of the country is, Texas has its own in-state grid system that everybody is hooked up and connected to. And as we're going through the extremes of weather changes, especially the week or a couple of weeks of absolute freezing, sometimes a lot of times sub-zero weather, and then most times throughout that long hot summer, we ain't getting no rain here in Texas. So we go through long periods of drought. And then whenever you experience that, you gotta keep that irrigation running to keep up with your yard. But when it comes to the overall cost, the utility bills here in DFW and in Texas average about 14% more than anywhere else in the country. This is something that you definitely need to pay huge attention to when trying to factor all that in for yourself. And then when it comes to insurance cost, whether it's home and auto, DFW and Texas, we're not that bad in comparison to the rest of the country, but it's still not great. Because kind of along the same lines that I mentioned previously about the different weather extremes, a big thing that we here in DFW experience quite often every year is the hailstorms that come through. And when you get hailstorms, of course, that's gonna bring damage to both your cars, your automobiles that are parked out in the yard, not covered by a garage by chance, and your roofs. And just to speak on my home and auto insurance kind of plan and premium that I have set up, for 2 vehicles in my house, to get both of those covered by the same provider, the annual premium for those turns out to add up to be around $4,500 per year. So definitely not the best in terms of insurance costs, but when comparing that to a bunch of other states that I've heard of, like Florida, for example, DFW home and auto insurance and the coverage and the policies and how it affects the overall cost of living isn't that bad, but that's definitely something that you need to be thinking about and considering as well. And then here is probably the biggest one, and again, the biggest negative that a lot of homeowners and locals are talking about here in DFW and Texas in general, and that is the cost of the property taxes here in the area. So when it comes to looking at the nation as a whole, we're looking at about a 1% tax rate for the property taxes. But here in Texas, we don't get to appreciate those lower property tax rates because here, on average, it's about 2% to about 2.4% as your property tax rate. So let's take into consideration that median or average home value that I mentioned earlier in the video of the average home prices of Texas. If you have a home that is assessed at $450,000, the amount that you're paying in annual property taxes per year is $9,000, which is more than double the majority of the states here in the country. But lo and behold, there is a glimmer of hope and there is a sign of relief because last year in 2023, the governor passed a property tax relief bill. And we have not seen that come into effect yet and we haven't reaped those benefits. But over time and what we should start seeing on a yearly basis, the average homeowner on a homesteaded property should be receiving some tax breaks and reliefs of a few $1,000s per year on their property tax bill. So hopefully that gave you an overall good idea of what you can expect in terms of cost of living here in DFW. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and I'll also leave my contact info down below. So on the real estate side, if you are looking to purchase a home in the area, or if you're looking to sell and maybe even get out of here, but want to take advantage of the flat fee full service listing model, which again is huge savings in terms of avoiding that typical 6% realtor cost, I'll leave my email, phone number, so just give me a call, text. We can set up a Zoom call, process your situation, and how I can best help. But I hope you enjoyed, hope you got some value out of it, and until next time, we'll see y'all real soon.